So in Austin yesterday, Texas had their spring game. And one of the quotes that you inevitably are going to hear anytime you ask an insider or especially a coach with any program about the spring game is, well, you can't learn a whole lot from a spring game. Well, I think that's sometimes true, that's sometimes not. I think you have to have the right lenses to view a spring game. For example, the Texas spring game, am I going to learn a whole lot about personnel? Am I going to, well, maybe. Just to pause there, maybe I am going to learn something about personnel. Am I going to learn a whole lot about plays, play calling philosophy, if I don't already know it about Steve Sarkeesian? No. And I'll give you the biggest clue, the biggest indicator yesterday is I watched probably 80, 90%. I watched pretty much the whole Texas spring game. I don't know that I saw one pre-snap shift or motion. I don't know when you watch them in the fall if there'll be one single play per game where they don't have one. If you've watched Steve Sarkeesian, if you watched Alabama the last couple of years, you know exactly what I mean. So yes, there was a wide variance between what you saw from Texas yesterday offensively and what you are going to see, which is why when we try and start judging quarterbacks, when we try and start judging receivers, offensive linemen, it's tough. So you go individually instead of collectively. To me, I feel that I mentioned the word variance. I think Texas is going to be as high a variance team nationally as there may be in 2021 because their roster has the requisite talent level, and you're always aware of this, to put up double-digit wins. But yet there's also going to be the variance monster in the room. In other words, a whole lot of really close games where a few bounces of the ball is going to decide things that could have them go 7-5, could have them go 8-4, 6-6, whatever. A lot of things in the cards. I don't think they're going to go 6-6. But what did we see yesterday? So leading up to the spring game, the word on this offensive line had been run blocking, feel okay. Pass pro, ooh. And yesterday I think did everything, at least in my mind, to validate that thinking. More on the offensive line in a second. But I will tell you, one guy who looks primed for a breakout season, or I guess not a breakout, you know who he is Bijan Robinson. Bijan Robinson is a young man who's just in the right place at the right time. Now, he's been in the right place. I mean, he's taking care of business. The right time may have found him. They will lean on him a ton, especially early. If you watched yesterday, and if we're just saying this out loud now, you're thinking about maybe their need to be more athletic at offensive tackle and their inability to maybe handle plus to elite edge rushing teams. And then you ask yourself, well, how aggressive is Louisiana going to be defensively? How aggressive could Arkansas be defensively? Those are their first two games. That's 1 and 2 that they play this year. Well, then it stands to reason, if you don't want to make a quarterback vulnerable and you got a guy like Bijan Robinson, among others, in the backfield, and the strength up front is already run blocking, it's not a great mystery what they're going to try and do and what they may need to do in tight games early on. How about the quarterback situation here? Because each quarterback had drops early in this game that would have totally shifted the box score and turned it upside down. So if you're just looking at the box score post-game, but then you go and watch it, you say, oh, wow, I didn't know that. Okay, they don't put that in the box score. I mean, I think it was Casey Thompson had a touchdown pass dropped early on. So, and Hudson Card had that too. Are we looking at it? No, we're not looking at it. Okay, so what I did see is I think I saw enough from Casey Thompson, and I think I saw enough from, or felt enough from how they feel, their staff feels about him, to believe that's the guy that has the edge. But having said that, there is a big thing that happens around some of these programs when there isn't a whole lot of information, when there isn't a whole lot of eyeballs at practice every day consistently delivering information. Well, then you start to hear some things, but then your eyeballs tell you a different thing when you finally get in a spring game, for instance. And Hudson Card yesterday had some good moments to where if you had never read a practice report and you just watched this yesterday, you would think to yourself, oh, these guys look pretty even. I don't know if that's reality, but you could make that reasonable conclusion. So, I thought there were moments, okay? That's all I'm saying. I thought there were moments, and again, it's very, very different than what you're going to see them asked to do in the regular season. Chip Brown over at Horns 24/7. Throughout spring, there were various points where he was talking about this receiver group. We spoke about this a couple of times on Late Kick, where he was talking about this receiver group, and he said, Jordan Whittington, you can count on him. And we saw that yesterday. Not that we needed to see anything more from him, but you saw that on display yesterday. Troy O'Meara, who I think was in a black no contact, but still looked good yesterday. You can count on him. Yes, we can count on him. So we saw those things. But then behind those names, Like there were various points in the spring, different names, but this is a new staff in town. They're looking to find as many guys as they can lean on as possible at that receiver position. And that really was a lot of what I took away from the spring game yesterday. Whittington, baller, can count on him. Troy O'Meary, you can count on him. There are other guys, and there are guys I think that are going to have individual moments this year where you say, man, if we could just get that every week. But see, you don't say that about Whittington, or you probably won't this year. You'll get it every week from him. They just need more of those guys. And that's okay. Still relatively early. Still a long way to go until the season starts. Need more of those guys. Speaking of those guys, during the festivities yesterday, I don't know if a lot of you noticed, I think everyone in Texas Nation noticed, they picked up Xavier Worthy. Xavier Worthy, one of the top receivers in the country, had committed to Michigan. Things went sour. He did not, he enrolled. He got his release from Michigan, and he has committed to Texas. That's a guy who's going to play this year. He's not going to have to sit out a year or anything like that. But also today, they picked up Devin Richardson, linebacker from New Mexico State. That's a guy with 3 years left to play. They feel like they got a steal there. I don't know what else they would say about him, but they feel like that's a good athletic 6'3", about 240-pound linebacker that they can plug in and be in the rotation, or at least be a viable contender for playing time immediately. I'll tell you one other thing I took away that has nothing to do with football. Hey, their construction looks good. That longhorn carved in the end zone, some of your heads are in the gutter, but mine's not. So when I looked at it, I think it looks good. I think it looks really good. So keep on keeping on out there. I'm always a big believer at the college level in involving tradition in your construction. So if you get to draw up the plans and you can carve the shape of a longhorn into the new seats in a new end zone construction project, then do it. Why not? Steve Sarkeesian, one thing he said yesterday after the spring game that caught my ears was he said, we like where we are on the line of scrimmage. Now that may have gone over some heads. That may not be a big deal. Everyone's focused on the quarterbacks. And I'll tell you this, too. Steve Sarkeesian has not been a head coach this time around. Well, he hasn't been a head coach at all this time around. In his previous life, you never know if a guy's going to carry over and continue to use the same go-to methodology when he's speaking publicly as he used to. So I just heard him say this. Now, we're going to get to the fall eventually, and you and I are going to see with our own eyes what Texas looks like along the line of scrimmage. Just remember that. Just bookmark that, because he didn't have to say that. But he did say it. He said, I like where we are on the lines of scrimmage. Not a lot of coaches say that coming out of spring. Most of the time it's, well, we got work to do. In some shape, form, or fashion, we got work to do. And it's not that he didn't reiterate that they do have work to do, especially in pass pro, but he seems to like where they are. So I'm going to take him at his word, and then we will adjust accordingly.